What's happening, fam? John here from AF Anime. We are back to review another chapter of One Piece, this time chapter 1056, which is called Cross Guild. And if you've read the chapter, which I'm assuming you did, you know that that refers to Buggy's updated name for his delivery service, but we'll talk more about that here in a bit. First, we'll talk about the cover page, which is continuing the Germa storyline, an emotionless excursion. And as we can see here, Katakuri and Oven are attacking the Germa siblings. Now, to be honest, I don't really think we've ever gotten a frame of reference as to how much time has passed since he and Luffy's fight, but I think from the fact that we look here and there are no bandages, no wounds, no wraps, that we'd have to assume that at least a couple days have passed so that Katakuri can heal up. And we also see that Oven's here, his fellow triplet, and I could be mistaken, but I do believe that Oven was one of the characters who was not present on the ship in Wano, so I think it's safe to assume that this takes place as Big Mom, Parasparrow, and the rest of her crew headed toward Wano. Moving along to the Germa siblings though, it would appear that they seem to be in a quite defensive posturing here. Now I would think that with Oven, the four of them would probably take him on with little to no difficulty, but with Katakuri included in that equation, it might be a bit too much for them to handle. So once again, my interest is piqued. I'm incredibly excited to see how they handle the situation. My best guess is that they'll just escape, avoiding any kind of conflict with Katakuri. In any case, that's enough about the cover page for this week. Let's go ahead and talk about the chapter itself. So the first thing in chapter 1056 that we actually address is the after effects of the fight with the retainers and Green Bull. And it looks like the only two to have been stabbed and drained are Raizo and Shinobu. And at first I was confused about this because I didn't remember Shinobu being present for the fight with Green Bull. But when I went back and I looked at the previous two chapters, when they first confronted Green Bull, yeah, she's front and center, and somehow I just completely overlooked that character despite the glaring design choices that make her stand out amongst this group. But I do remember talking with one of the commenters in my previous video about how she might be a perfect counter to the Woods fruit, in the sense that she could mature or age the wood quickly, but it's possible he was just too fast for her, or her lack of understanding in hockey doesn't really give her fruit the ability to take advantage of something like that. Moving on though, we do see that they are not dead, which is a great thing, but it does raise some questions as to the well-being or the future for all of the Beast or Animal Kingdom pirates who were attacked by Green Bull while they were in Udon. My best guess as to what their future might be is that they were drained to the point of little to no resistance, and then Green Bull sent for those battleships that we saw him walking for, specifically to have them arrested. And if that happened, that's okay. It's not uncommon for enemies of the Straw Hat Pirates to wind up in prison, but some of these characters do have interesting futures and pasts that we still want to know more about, namely being King and Queen. So I hope we get some update on information as to what their future might hold. Moving along with the chapter though, Kinemon is next up to get a moment as he apologizes for not being present with the fight with Green Bull, as he was in Curry reuniting with his wife. He did rush over there, however, and does seek to get back to her side, but we do get some touching moments about him referring to his wife's beauty, in particular how she still looks good after 20 years and even after facial burns when their hometown was attacked. And this feel-good dialogue leads into a small bit of banter and conversation between him and the two retainers Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, but as the two rulers of Zou, they have decided to stay behind in Wano and pass down the rulership to Carrot. And this is not in a dualistic fashion as it was before. Carrot is basically now the new king of Zou. And this is both surprising and interesting at the same time. Carrot doesn't really have those leader type qualities. She doesn't have a stoic or serious enough personality to be considered for this role. But at the very least, it would kind of be in running of what we've seen before with the Straw Hat Pirates, as typically the princess or ruler of those kingdoms tend to tag along with, if not directly assist Luffy in multiple ways throughout the arcs that they're involved in. So when it comes to Luffy and befriending royalty, or more specifically princesses or queens, we have Boa Hancock, we have Princess Vivi, we have Princess Rebecca, we have Shirahoshi. I mean, the Straw Hat Pirates must just be fortunate at picking up royal allies as the journey goes through, as it seems like almost every other island, they get someone who is the leader of a country to get on their side. And now having Carrot, who looks up to Luffy and his crew, and then also being the king or queen of Zou, I think it's safe to assume that Carrot is pretty much the next big addition to the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. I'd imagine that she's not going to be sailing as a pirate. She'll probably just return home, but no knowing that Luffy has the entirety of the mink tribe of Zou, of Zunisha at his beck and call alongside Momonosuke and Wano, that's just an amazing setup for an amazing reunion when One Piece nears its end. So yeah, I guess Carrot is king. Pushing on with the chapter though, the next big moment we get is the reveal to Momonosuke and Hiyori that their grandfather is still alive. This is despite the fact that 1 or 2 chapters ago he made the declaration that he has no intention on revealing himself. He did do it this chapter and it made for a decent reunion of sorts. I mean, he doesn't get in his feels about the moment, although we see some tears from Hiyori and Momonosuke. But he does offer to stick around long enough to teach them some things which can be incredibly useful to Momonosuke, especially considering that he's an 8-year-old shogun in a 28-year-old's body. I mean, as far as we know, Sukiyaki is no master swordsman, so I doubt he can offer much training to Momonosuke. But the things that he can teach Momonosuke and Hiyori about the history of Wano, the history of the world, or even assisting them with the delegation of shogun's responsibilities, this guy could prove to be very important to them before he goes back into being a recluse. Now, this made for a decent moment in the chapter. It was a little bit touching. We probably could have gone without it, but it did give us a nice reunion for the remaining Kozuki clan members, as well as a little bit of comedy when we see that Kinemon was the only scabbard who genuinely didn't recognize Tinguyama as his former shogun. So funny stuff there, but it does lead into an important conversation that we see amongst the Straw Hats as they all officially recognize that Pluton is in fact located there in Wano. And just as expected from Luffy, despite its importance and its power, Luffy wants nothing to do with it, so they're just gonna let it sit. Although once again we are posed with the interesting question about why Oden would want to release it. We don't get an official breakdown as to what Pluton is or how it works, but from this chapter we can discern that Frankie is fully understanding about what this weapon is and how it operates. But that discussion of Pluton was wrapped up when Shinobu and Otama showed on the scene. Shinobu apparently has slimmed down a good deal and even gotten taller. I guess the opposite or the haggard version of a matured lady looks like a young lady. Whatever, that works. I mean, it's funny. But at the same time, we also learned that Otama is now an official student of Shinobu's. And Luffy has even gone as far as to promise her a spot on the ship if she can learn ninjutsu by the time they reunite. Now, that dialogue does transition into the end of this conversation piece with Caribou peering in on the conversation and learning conveniently about the ancient weapon Pluton. So now this is a character who's privy to the location and possibly even the understanding of what 2 ancient weapons are, and it appears that he is hellbent, or if not confident, about telling someone in particular. We don't get any hints about who this character is, but my best guess is that it's probably either Blackbeard or maybe even Dragon. Now, if you have any thoughts as to who that might be sure to comment down below and let me know, as I am somewhat in the dark here and I don't honestly believe it's his brother, so I'm open to all ideas. So Caribou's appearance in this chapter is very short, but right after it we do get a couple scenes or a couple panels with Momonosuke, and at first honestly I thought that these were just filler panels to kind of take up some space in the chapter to make it a little bit longer, but on my second read through I'm starting to realize how important these panels are to this character and the reveal of his growth. As we can see the random people in his castle referring to him as a shogun and giving him honorifics, he keeps a kind of stoic and stern face and keeps a kind of noble air about himself. But the moment he opens the door expecting the Straw Hats to be on the other side, he cracks this childlike smile and his innocence kind of shines through, showing that he can be comfortable being himself around the Straw Hats, but he also has the strength to present himself as a shogun around his people. In any case, that's just great writing on Oda's part. This scene does lead into a moment where he reunites with Hiyori for her to reveal that the Straw Hats have already said their goodbyes and are on their way out. Kinemon is also in the dark about the departure, so I assume what we're going to see within the next couple chapters is one of those, great waving, crying send-offs from 2 people who did travel with the Straw Hats. I mean, they do have a history. So speaking of send-offs, the last part of this chapter is pretty much dedicated to the Tokage port in Udon, where we see the 3 successful pirate captains in the form of Kid, Law, and Luffy discussing their departure. They obviously have a lot of bickering, as they usually do when they're in scenes together, but in this one they're arguing about which direction to take upon their departure, as they don't want to go to the same place. So after complaining and drawing straws, Luffy is heading southeast, Kid is heading east, and Law is heading northeast. Now, as we already know and Usopp has mentioned in this chapter, any direction they choose to go is going to be dangerous, but it will be interesting to see if and how Oda keeps up with the other two pirates as the Straw Hats move on to the Southeast Island. But enough about travel plans, let's talk about Buggy the Clown. As many of you who've been following this channel know, I did do a video explaining as to why Buggy was a viable candidate to be declared at Yonko, and this chapter just solidifies it. One of the points that I pointed out was that he would be so influential and so powerful at this point that he could attract even more influential and powerful people. And just like the community was speculating a long time ago, he has in fact got Mihawk under his belt. And also Crocodile. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're under his belt, as I think the name change for Cross Guild, rather than having Buggy in the name in particular, kind of implies a partnership of sorts, so it might be possible that they're not under his crew per se, but what is noteworthy is that they are now putting out bounties for Navy members, and this is notable because all three of these characters were at some point intensely pursued by the Navy, if not done wrong by them. So at the very least, the Cross Guild is an interesting team up, but if anything, this might also serve as a bit of inspiration for Law and Kid to get some stronger people under their belts. I mean, Kid's crew isn't terrible, Law's is useful in their own ways, but I think in comparison to the Straw Hats, if they were even to go Big Three versus Big Three, it would be no contest, the Straw Hats win. So if anything, Kid and Law seeing Luffy gain a Shichibukai to his crew, as well as watching Buggy acquire Mihawk and Crocodile, they might actually be inspired to add more crew members who can put up a good fight against some of the high tier people they're going to be encountering going forward. Speaking of those two, the exposition about Buggy and his new crew ends with Law giving Kid a copy of the Road Poneglyph, saying that he earned it as much as he and Luffy did, which is true. And this is also a very cool aspect of these three characters and their dynamics, as they did agree and have an alliance to take down the two Yonko together, so they're all sharing the victory or the spoils of said victory. And aside from the mystery of Caribou telling a certain person about the ancient weapon, we also have the mystery of the man with the burn scar. Now, obviously, Oda loves his mysteries and his silhouettes, but my best guess as to who this man with the burn scar could be would be Kuzan, who has burn scars from his fight with Akainu. It could also be Whitebeard's son, who, to my knowledge, doesn't have any burn scars, but is in fact incredibly scarred up. And the last option would be Sabo, who I believe has scars over his eye from either a burn or the destruction of the ship that he was on. So those are my three best guesses, but if you guys have any ideas, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. And I suppose the last thing that is worth talking about is the last page of this chapter, which includes a brief dialogue between Momonosuke, Yamato, and Kinemon, where all three of them pretty much confirm that they believe that Yamato is in fact heading out with Luffy. Now, we as a audience have no idea whether or not Luffy's going to be cool with this, but the send-off is going to happen most likely with these three waving off to the Straw Hats and possibly Yamato joining the Straw Hats. So there you have it. That's going to do it for my review of this chapter. If I had to give it a rating, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Still very entertaining. It still is very akin to what we've seen when the Straw Hats wrap up an arc or leave an island. I mean, we had great animation, good storytelling, a little bit of hype in regards to the mystery character with the burn scars and the mystery contact of Caribou's. Just a great One Piece chapter in general. I really loved it. However, this is not a one-way conversation, so if you disliked or liked anything about this chapter, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. I am always listening and willing to talk One Piece. Also, if you've made it to the end of this review, thank you very much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate that. For all of you who are still here, if you enjoy content like this, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It would greatly help out the channel and also help motivate me into creating more content for you guys. Once again, I am John from AF Anime. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.